Welcome back to another episode of the Catholic Buzz Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Father Daniele, and I'm joined, as usual, by Josh Sullivan.
Hello.
Welcome to you, Josh.
Thank you.
And Matt Van Milligan.
Hi.
I'm glad to have you guys here in person because this month we're celebrating the month of Mary. We're also celebrating the time when we celebrate the World Day of Communications in the Church. And if you've been following headlines, have you been reading about this mishap with AI, like artificial intelligence, and this priest on Catholic Answers? He was like a generated priest, like a robotic priest.
Yeah. Artificial intelligence.
Questions. Yeah. And so the last couple months, actually, Pope Francis has been talking about artificial intelligence, and he uses his message of World Communications Day to talk about artificial intelligence. So we are going to talk about artificial intelligence in our own words, not on computer-generated text. And we're actually going to do this for 2 episodes. We're going to talk today about what artificial intelligence is, like how are we using it, what it is, how it's being used, all those things. And then in our next episode, we're going to talk about the proper uses of it, right? Mm-hmm. So can you guys, I don't know a lot about artificial intelligence. I hear you guys as professors here, your students are using ChatGPT to fill out answers on exams or essays or things like that. I don't know lots about it, but this Father Justin character from Catholic Answers was a priest that you ask the computer a question and it generates an answer for you?
Yeah. So, So it's fun for us to first of all talk about this, just because again, Josh's background is computer science, and my professional background is like functional analysis of information systems. So we come at this from like a professional perspective, but the big questions we're asking today is just like, how do we encounter this from a faith perspective? And the main question of today is just like, how does the Church leverage this as a tool, and different people have had different responses to that. So Catholic Answers, to answer your question, created an interface for anyone kind of on the internet can talk to, because it unlike a lot of other AI, it's not text prompt based, it's voice prompt based. So you're actually trying to interact with it in kind of a personal way, but the persona that's presented to you is this Father Justin character. So it's, you're asking a priest, you're asking someone with some qualification, with some credibility, questions about the Catholic faith, and the data set for this AI, this large language model, is the entire corpus of Catholic Answers. And I believe they have the catechism in there as well. They have other kind of resources that you can ask questions. You can ask questions about, what is the Trinity? Why is the Trinity important? What do Catholics think about X, Y, Z? And then it responds to you in this persona. But the issue is that you're not actually talking to a priest. If we're going to do just kind of the how this played out, is that there was a lot of backlash. People on the internet aren't always, good-willed, and people immediately tried to break it. People immediately tried to kind of push the limits of what this kind of Father Justin interface.
Answer this?
Yeah, how would it answer? And asking questions of it that are, in some cases, either impossible to answer or require some human consideration to answer properly. And Catholic Answers, to give them credit, quickly identified this, and they kind of rebranded. They modified the parameters of what it could actually answer and what the AI could actually do, and they rebranded it as Justin the Apologist and not
Father Justin.
Father Justin, because they maybe didn't necessarily fully understand the implications of what that would entail, or how might people exploit that, for humor when they did it. So
that's not the only platform where you can have questions answered from a Catholic perspective. So this priest was not a real priest. He was a robot sort of thing. And
Chatbot.
It was using kind of like the Catholic Answers library of information to answer your questions, right? Yeah. But that's not the only...
No, there's a lot of them out there. In fact, when we're talking about AI, I think it's important to understand how AI works. And so just really briefly, because I can really geek out about this stuff, I have a whole course that I teach on it. So you can come and join us, and I'll teach you 14 weeks about AI. But basically what it works is it's easier to think of AI, artificial intelligence right now. It's easier. I mean, we break down the word artificial intelligence, meaning it's not really intelligent. It appears to be intelligent. It's not general intelligence. It's artificial. And so it appears to be intelligent, which means then that it has its data source somewhere else. And so it's really important when we're talking about AIs, specifically, that it's only as good as the people that created it, the data that it has to pull from, and how it was trained. And so when we're looking at that, the data source that it comes from, so for instance, this Justin, the apologist now, he pulled it from all the Catholic answers, which is a really good source of probably some really good solid information, the catechism being in there as well and all that kind of stuff. So it's a really good source of information. The people that trained it, well, obviously the people that would train this one or the other Catholic AIs that are out there would be doing it for the right reasons, I would imagine, specifically to help. There's different purposes, and we can talk about those. But the other way is how they train it. And so when you're training an artificial intelligence machine, there's two different ways to train it. And one of the ways is that you would train it the right answers and hopefully get them from point A to point C with them trying to figure out point B on their own. And the way that you do that is you would feed it some information, and then you would be sitting there, and hopefully they give you point C. And if they don't give you point C, you give, wrong, and then you would just keep asking the question. And then eventually what the computer does, what the programming does, is tries to put patterns together that it understands itself to formulate the data and come out with C. And once it does hit C, you can either have programmed how it got from A to B to C, and that's kind of how the ChatGPT or those things might have worked, and then you've given it C. So then you start to feed it new information, and then you would, again, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort to train this way because you have to almost ask it every single question that could possibly be asked, and then give it the answers that you're hoping for, or lead it to that answer, program it in. The way that most artificial intelligence works now is that computers are really good at looking for patterns on their own. And so we don't understand it sometimes, the way our brains work or the way that we might have figured out a pattern, but they do. So they look at patterns. So when you use artificial intelligence to look at the stock market, they might come up with different patterns that we never recognize as a human being, but their algorithm that they've worked out really works well for the stock market, And so it's the same kind of thing when it comes to answers and training. And so, for instance, one of the things that we do is we put in all Warner Brother characters. I do this in front of the class. I put in Warner Brother characters. So you have Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and Porky Pig. And you put them into their images into an AI. And then I put Mickey Mouse, Goofy, and Donald Duck into. So I've got 6 pictures, and I say, separate these into some categories. And automatically myself or even the students that I'm talking about would automatically assume, okay, well, we'll separate these into Warner Brothers and Disney. And maybe it's from the way that they were drawn the lines or some kind of pattern recognition. Sometimes the artificial machine that we're programming recognizes those patterns, the way the lines are drawn, the curves of the lines, or they're hand-drawn this or that or whatever. But one of the most common answers when we put these these images into the machine is that they separate them into ducks, and Porky Pig sometimes gets in there, and animals with big ears. And so Goofy, Bugs Bunny, and Mickey Mouse are all in a category. And so when you go back, like you just said, you put it in there and you try to, okay, now separate this into a pattern that you recognize. And it separates it. And then, so now as a programmer, I go, oh, yeah, that's acceptable. That's a good way of thinking about it. Okay, good. Now, and I just keep training it on making it think or pick up patterns that might be there. The easiest way to look at artificial intelligence, I mean, that's getting down the brass taxes, but the easiest way to look at it is basically it's a librarian. You give it a whole bunch of information, a whole bunch of library books in a library, and you're going to the librarian to ask for information. How is this possible? The librarian can only regurgitate what's in the library. And so it goes and tries to make up. The biggest problem that we have with that is, unlike a librarian maybe knowing exactly where to find the answers, is that if ChatGPT or some artificial intelligence machines don't have an answer, they're prompted to give an answer no matter what. And this is where we as professors actually catch a lot of students cheating with ChatGPT or those types of things, is that they come up with resources that don't exist. They come up with quotes from people that never happened. You know what I mean? And so I'm using ChatGPT, but any AI software can what's called hallucinations, or they just add in their own ad lib stuff into those spots where they're blank, and try to give it some information.
To be like, just so I understand a little more, with ChatGPT, what is the parameters of the information it has? Is it the entire internet?
Pretty much, it's whatever. And so sometimes it's document, like if it's looking at scholarly journals and those types of things. It's they update. ChatGPT updates on a certain regular basis. So I think they're at 5 point something now, or 4.5. And so as they update, you get newer information and more data.
So then something like Justin, the apologist, or what you guys were showing me before we went on the air, Magisterium AI, their database would be like what? The Catechism of the Catholic Church, canon law,
scholarly journals in the Catholicism, whatever they decide to put in their library.
Yeah, so that's what's interesting. And this probably brings us to our next question about like, what is the responsible use of AI? Because, again, if you have this kind of, I don't want to say general AI, because general AI is another thing. But if you have this AI that's, its source material is really, really broad, and again, it may draw things that are irrelevant. Again, it's a it's a librarian, but yeah, unlike a librarian, there's no accountability. There's no accountability that it's giving you the right information or it's drawing from credible sources in the first place. So we can identify a range, I think, of people who are developing artificial intelligence systems in an accountable way, in a responsible way, and kind of that feeds into the question of, as Catholics, how can we use AI in a positive way? So you can say something like the Justin the Apologist was maybe they narrowed it in response to errors that the AI was making. They narrowed the parameters. They narrowed what kinds of questions it could answer and what kinds of answers it could give. Whereas, what you said, Magisterium AI, I think they're being much more diligent in how they're constructing their AI. So their source material is the whole corpus of magisterial documents of the church. So, anything from kind of early ecumenical councils, papal encyclicals, anything that's been issued officially from the church. And what's cool about it is that they're working in conjunction with pontifical institutes. They're working with archives that have these documents that aren't necessarily readily available, even at Vatican.va, like where we normally get our. It also lets you choose kind of how narrow or how broad of source material you want. So you can say, I just want the magisterial teaching of the church. I just want, official documents. And he was like, but if I want to broaden kind of the answer I get, what does the tradition say? Can you include Thomas Aquinas' Summa, the Summa Theologica, or Augustine's City of God, or, other documents or other kind of texts that, while not being kind of official documents of the church, have been formative in kind of the development of Catholic theology. So, and also, again, just Magisterium AI, another thing that they're doing to build accountability into their AI is that everything that it produces, it provides a source for. It provides, this is where we got it. You as a responsible reader can go and check this out, make sure it's being, referenced in context, and in the way that you mean.
As opposed to like ChatGPT, which doesn't give you resources. For people who are wondering, Magisterium AI is they got the website magisterium.com, which is amazing.
Amazing, yeah.
You can just put in a question.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Any questions? And a lot of priests use this, a lot of scholarly, because we always forget, or I think I always forget, anyways, that like there's a whole section of in church, in the history of the church, but also like you can get PhDs in multiple different sections of the church that all of our priests go through their Master of Divinity, and so have to write these papers and amazing things that are out there. So it's not like when we talk about church teaching. It's not like one small section of a library. This is a massive, massive amount of information that's probably some of the most well-kept documents for thousands of years, because the church was the way to keep documents a lot of times with monks and everything else and rewriting. And but yeah, so it is. One of the things I really liked about Magisterium is that I was listening to a talk by the CEO talking about creating the machine, and that they understood what hallucination was in AIs, meaning that this make up stuff. And so they specifically put a limit on it of what it's able to do and not do, like the parameters, as Matt was saying, what they're allowed to make up just answers. So that's why they source all their materials. And I think a lot of scholarly people in the church, I'm going to say, use it now to help find, even priests using it to help write homilies. Just like to give me, what did the Pope say about forgiveness? What has the Pope said about homosexuality or tithing or whatever? Like you can get a whole like you just type that in, you can get a brass amazing scope of everything that the church has said on it, or like Matt was saying, like you can limit it down to just what the popes have said, or magisterial teaching, or saints, or doctors of the church. So it's kind of cool.
So what is like? It is sounding cool. Like I just heard about these things sort of today, and you know, but what is the downfall of these things, of using these? Like there was already sort of an embarrassing hiccup there with Father Justin. What about for everyday people? Is there no downfall? Is there? Is it just helpful?
It's understanding that it's still artificial intelligence, that it's still prone to mistakes with whoever trained it, the training style, and the documents that's fed into it. And so, like magisterium is pretty good. They're taking it to the next step of accountability, which I really like. And even I'm going to say Catholic Answers, Justin the Apologist has now figured out some of the problems. But like some of the problems that came up, I mean, the famous one was that someone said, "Well, you're a priest." Like they can reason with the AI, and the AI giving it open parameters can start to try to make the patterns and connections. So, Father Justin, you're a priest. Yes, tell me where you studied. And he went off on some story about studying in Assisi, and that he's American but studied in Assisi and those kinds of things. But then also went off on like, so you're a priest, and priests can hear confession. Can you hear my confession? And the AI making the connection. Oh, I'm a priest. Priest can. And started like to make
the logic was there.
The logic was there, and the parameters allowed it. Then you could make a full confession to an artificial intelligence machine with absolution and everything. So problems kind of lie into
but invalid.
It's invalid. Yeah. It's totally invalid. As you're saying it to a computer, and I mean there's major problems with that. I mean, first of all, that it could be recorded, right? Like that information is recorded and learned upon. So confession being recorded obviously is against it, and you're not having one-on-one. You have to be face-to-face. As we know, we talked about this in other episodes for confession, and that it's not an actual priest. So I mean, those are major problems. But the fact that the robot couldn't distinguish this, and so those are areas that the robot could be taught, and meaning that you can program in. Okay, no, you can't do this, right? And I believe now that's why they've taken them out. He's not a priest anymore. He's they call him Justin the Apologist, so that he has answers to Catholic teachings or apologetics. And so,
but there's no assumption of a ministerial
component
aspect to what he's doing.
Yeah. And the other one too is like, and again, logic. So the other logic that they did was you can baptize only with water, and that was a question that kind of went through. Baptizing with water, yes. And so Gatorade is 98% water, which is mostly water. Yes. So can I get baptized with Gatorade? And in the logic, well, it has to be mostly water because that's the wording, or it has to be assumed to be water. 98%, you would assume that is water. Okay, yes, you can. You can baptize with Gatorade, and that's kind of like those are the ways that they tried to break it.
Made it say things that were canonically incorrect.
Exactly.
So, but back to your question about like what are some of the potential pitfalls? I think people are, especially Catholics or people who kind of recognize that technology isn't neutral. Technology can have some pretty disastrous effects. That people are pretty suspicious of artificial intelligence, and some people will be as extreme, just like this is intrinsically bad. This isn't good for our souls, so we should just kind of reject it. And I think like I'm not completely on the other side of that, but I am actually, again, and it could just be my professional background, could be kind of what I teach, AI in the coming years is going to impact our lives, our work, in ways that we've kind of barely scratched the surface. Yeah. And that genie is not going to go back in the bottle. So I think as the question, that maybe the more constructive question is, what is the proper way of constructing these tools, because again, at the end of the day, if we are going to use them effectively, we need to look at them as tools. And what is our kind of responsible use? So we already looked at like maybe magisterium AI is more taking seriously kind of what is proper construction
Yeah.
of an AI system. But again, I think if we are going to use these tools effectively, if we're going to use them for catechesis, if we're going to use them to kind of build up the church, we really need to seriously ask the question: what is proper use, and how do we avoid some of the potential pitfalls? So we can say, like, what is the value of this? When I was becoming Catholic, I had to research these things. I had to track down like physical copies of encyclicals because, again, there wasn't just this full kind of database that I could access online. Being able to navigate the tradition of the church, being able to navigate, I was making the decision to become Catholic on what by comparison would be really limited information. So a tool like this, I think, really would have accelerated my development, and being able to address a lot of the questions that I had, especially since I came at a lot of these questions from a philosophical perspective or a philosophical background that the priest and the people who were leading my RCIA group, they may not have been kind of steeped in the documents of the church to be able to answer these questions. So again, a lot of people will point to a potential pitfall that AI makes stuff up. It's like, okay, well, if you are if the creators of this the AI are putting in safeguards, are actually narrowing their parameters, so that this isn't the case. And you could even say we're saying that magisterium AI is probably kind of the best. Or the best version of this that I've encountered. There's also a potential limitation. So even though it's drawing on kind of the whole tradition of the church, does it look at these documents in priority, in hierarchy? Because different documents have different levels of authority. Different sections within documents have formulations that give them more authoritative weight. And it's very difficult for me to think that an AI is actually parsing this properly, or that it's giving kind of priority to pronouncements that are more doctrinal in nature, that are touching on discipline, and actually kind of measuring these against each other. So you could say even though it's a really, really powerful tool, it still requires a human agent to go through and validate and look and see okay, it's referencing these things, but this is a encyclical written whatever. This is a a dogmatic proclamation. So again, we still need. It's not an excuse to shut our brains off. It's not I don't really want to think about the answer because the computer gives me an answer. Mm-hmm. But as something to augment our research, as something to kind of accelerate, the way that we learn about the church and what the church teaches. Again, I think there is a case to be made for responsible development and responsible use. But again, I think it comes down to how the individual is using it.
Yeah, I agree. We used to call it we call it in the business now. It's like the calculator. It's a lot of people. Well, calculator was a fad, or the computer was a fad, or whatever else. It's not something that's going to be going back in the bottle, like you said. It is something that's here to stay. It's something that's going to be used. Now, the problem that I have not on the Catholic Church level, or not in a matter of faith, but just in AI in general, is that as more things are created from AI, AI is using AI sources to generate the content. And so what you have is there's an interesting study that was done a year ago, 2 years ago now. And what it did was it took so it said, search the whole internet and I want you to draw pictures for me. It was to draw pictures. And so draw a picture of a duck. And so it scoured the entire internet, found all the pictures of ducks, and then created a duck. And the very first image that it created looks very much like a duck. I don't think anybody would question that this is a duck. But then it said, okay, now what I want you to do is source half of your content from AI-created content, mm-hmm. and half of your content from human direct sources, and create a duck. And now you get more of a cartoony, a different kind of duck. And then, so what the study did was it took the AI and started slowly. What it was suggesting was as we're filling up the internet with these AI answers and the AI drawings and the AI whatever, is that eventually it gets to the point where there's very little actual original human content on the internet, and it's drilling everything from it's gathering all the information from other AI sources, which is then dumped is pattern recognition from pattern recognition. And eventually, it got to a point where it's just a yellow blur on a screen, and that was the AI from using hardly any human but just artificial intelligence. 50 times over, 5,000 times over, or whatever it was, blur. So as you're saying, Matt, like sometimes it takes the point of still takes a human touch to put everything in place and to recognize and distinguish, and that this is not okay. Like this is not the correct answer, and this is the correct answer. And so we're not at that point yet. We don't have to worry about AI taking over the world. It's still artificial intelligence. It appears to be intelligent, but it's not. And so we still need the human touch to distinguish what is an okay answer and what's a not okay answer. And so that comes with everything from like asking it to draw a duck to having it, source the materials on something about faith. Yeah. And so, but I think right now, one of the things that I would say is that, Catholics should grab it and get a hold of it, understand it, and start to use it because it's not going away. So we shouldn't be scared of it. It depends on how we use it. And that would be where I would suggest that we have to really start to dive in the uses of AI. Yeah. I mean, for sourcing our scholarly journals, great, amazing. For having it on a website, like having it on the church website, let's say, if it was possible to do that. I don't think it is yet, but having just like a ask Justin the Apologist just a little thing in the church website. So when someone comes there and has a question, they don't have to necessarily ask a priest or whatever, so they can find the Catholic answer right away. It's a very great source of evangelization and stuff. And if you want deeper, like have the AI say, if you need deeper, then talk to Father Daniele about this. You know what I mean? So it's a really good source for all that kind of stuff. But again, there are some limitations.
Because we talked about another episode a while ago that there were such thing as Google Catholics starting to form here, like people who are researching the faith online, leading them to be baptized in the Catholic Church, right? So it's not the worst thing in the world to have a place that's trusted, that, like you said, has the proper parameters in place. Like magisterium.com is giving you sources of what it's saying. So it's not a horrible thing to be able to go to something like that and ask questions, right? Even if you're doing your own research and something stuck out with like, I don't really understand, like, or what does transubstantiation actually mean, or what is this, or what is that?
Or you just
pop that into having Magisterium AI. But what I don't agree with. Something that you brought up is because when I first went to the website today, like to look at it, like one of the examples it gives is like, ask it a question. What is the church teaching on abortion? It said, and the other one was write a homily on forgiveness. Right. Priests should not be using this for homily purposes or things like that. Like, I think that's ridiculous.
But what I think there is that I agree with you. I think like writing homilies. I mean, you've gone to the classes on how to write homilies and those kind of things. So I would defer to your judgment on that. But one of the things that I would think is that if you were looking for some good sources to back up what you're already saying, like if you felt like you had to defend the topic that you were talking about.
Listen, I've been to a church where I was in the sanctuary, and this priest pulled out papers and gave his homily reading off these papers, right? And sometimes I have notes too.
Of course.
I didn't think anything of it until I was helping clear up after Mass, and I had grabbed these papers, and it was from a
website.
Website. And someone else had written this homily, and this priest had just like read someone else's homily and passed it off as his own. Like, not like, to quote,
of course,
so or whatever. So me experiencing that, I guess I get the.
Can I quibble with it just a little bit? I don't think you need an AI to write your homilies because you're a gifted homilist. I don't think priests should get AI generative services to write their homilies for them. I think that some priests who may have other gifts in other areas and may not be that skilled.
You think should use it?
Use it not to write it for them, but as a starting point. How do I structure my responses, and including in your prompt, this is what I'm getting from this gospel and this gospel and this gospel. How do I tie these ideas together as maybe to give them some cues, perhaps? But again, it's using it. Same thing, for the using it as a research tool for a scholarly article. Don't get it to write your paper for you.
Yes.
But looking for ideas for sources. So the calculator analogy you gave earlier is perfect. Is that when I was in grade 11 math, and we have to do complex math that takes half a page of paper, you're like, why am I learning this? I could just use a calculator. And my math teacher rightly said at the time, you're not just going to have a calculator with you all the time. But my math teacher didn't properly anticipate smartphones, and I do actually have a calculator on me all the time. But a calculator just doing kind of a simple function is one thing. That's not you wouldn't necessarily say that's artificial intelligence, because it's just computation. But even though I have a calculator on me at all times, it was a good process for me to learn math. That actually forms me as a kind of a more capable, well-rounded person. The same thing with kind of the AI. Yes, you can use it if you need it, or if it acts as a springboard to you producing something of a higher quality. Again, the technology shouldn't replace your effort, or you shouldn't use it as, well, I don't need to learn math because I have a calculator. Yes, use it to help you when you need help, but it would be very easy to become dependent on it.
I think that's what you said. It's not to replace your own effort, right? And so if you're using it to replace your own effort, that's where I think you'd have a problem. We have a problem with it in the school system too. For my students, I say, well, if you're looking for using ChatGPT, for instance, using AI to help you find or list an outline that you can then take and formulate with your own ideas and stuff, that's perfectly fine. So whereas I would say similar with the homily, whereas in help you formulate a structure and then have you put in your own points and everything else. But I think it's taking away what you said, Matt, there was perfect, the effort. Yeah. It's not to take away your own effort into that thing. So putting a homily in, I would imagine if you're doing it to be lazy, and just because this is part of my job and I have to do it and I don't like doing it, so I'm just going to have the AI write the homily, there's a problem there. Sorry, jumping back to what you were saying about potential drawbacks and pitfalls, there's also the possibility of error. If I'm not properly validating this, or if I'm just letting it do it for me, the AI, and again, there's a range of quality in AI. If it's making stuff up, or and I'm not willing to kind of look into the source material, that there's a risk that it's going to give you a wrong answer. That's how we catch students. But I would say that risk is already prevalent in Google Catholics, or people who are if you type a question into Google, you're going to get maybe some good answers. You're going to get a lot of bad answers as well. There's that risk is ubiquitous. It's and you'll get that with people as well. So that we're going to talk in our next episode about the human AI interaction and how that can be a bit problematic. But if you ask a question about what does the church teach about XYZ, and you ask people on the street, if you ask practicing Catholics, if you ask lapsed Catholics, you're going to get some good answers. You're going to get some bad answers. So again, it should never replace, in the same way that it shouldn't replace anywhere we're asking this question, it shouldn't replace our own diligence and our own accountability to actually ask the question honestly and properly investigate the answer.
So this is really just seeking information we're talking about today. We're talking about stuff like ChatGPT. We're talking about Magisterium, or Ask Father Justin, or Justin the Apologist, whatever it is. Yeah. But there's a whole other side of AI that we're going to get into in the next episode. We're going to talk about relationships with artificial intelligence. We're going to talk about deep fakes. And actually, Pope Francis, when talking about artificial intelligence, acknowledged that he was the victim of a deep fake photo that went viral online. So we're going to talk about that in our next episode. So thanks for joining us today as we talk about the one side of AI. We're going to continue our talk on the other side of it in our next episode. So join us for that. For Josh Sullivan and Matt Van Milligan, my name is Father Daniele. We'll see you next episode on the Catholic Buzz.